Well, today I'm going to be talking about what I like to call the curiosity crisis and how I believe that AI is going to humanize learning in a way that we've never seen before, and why we actually shouldn't be scared of it replacing the role of the teacher or the human at all. So, before we jump into things, I like to usually start with who am I? Why did I build Nectar in the first place? And why am I sitting here in front of you? So some of you may know this story. It might be a little bit of a repeat. For those that don't know, like Chloe said, my name is Kavitta Ghai, and I'm the co-founder and CEO here at Nectar. My co-founder Jordan and I started Nectar 7 years ago when we were undergrad students at UC Santa Barbara. And it was born out of the frustrations that we felt in the classroom ourselves. For me personally, I'm autistic and I have ADHD. So no classroom that I've ever been in before has felt comfortable for me or my brain to be in. And then I got to college and I started paying $40,000 to be very uncomfortable. And that's finally when it became enough of a pain point for me that I said, either I'm going to drop out or I'm going to do something about it. And to give you an idea of who I was in the classroom, I was the kid that always sat in the last row. I never raised my hand in class, never went into office hours. And it wasn't because I didn't want to engage with the material or I was bored. It was because I was scared. I thought that at any moment that I asked a question, was going to be exposed as the student who had somehow snuck my way onto UCSB's campus and didn't actually mean to be there, didn't have the skills necessary, didn't have the intelligence necessary. And it meant that every single class that I took, would never actually get the full value out of it. I started to see school as a means to an end, to just stick it out long enough to get that degree, the piece of paper at the end of the 4 years that said, congratulations, you can now be a functioning member of society and go get paid even more than you would have before. And that's how it really felt for everyone around me as well. The, I guess, silver lining was that I wasn't alone in that feeling. Whether it was because of ADHD or neurodivergence or just the way that the school system was set up, that's how almost every student around me was feeling then, 7 years ago, and especially now, today, is still feeling that exact same thing of, is this actually preparing me for the real world, for the workforce? And particularly now where we're seeing AI take over all of these jobs, am I actually prepared to go into a career path and not just get a job that is a means to an end exactly like college was? So today I want to talk to you about what does it mean when we say the classroom of the future is arriving via AI? As a faculty, a staff, or an administrator, how do you prepare for that? And what should we be excited for? And what are the things that we should be mitigating as well? And everything that I'm going to be talking to you today about is knowledge that we've gained from speaking to thousands of faculty, staff, admin, and students from across the nation over the last 7 years through multiple research studies that we've conducted to find out what are the exact pain points that students and faculty are facing right now, and how can AI truly help that? And what are the things that we should be focused on when we're thinking about creating a truly personalized education system and updating this 400-year-old classroom model that we still use today? So that's something that we focus on a lot here at Nectar is the same way that we've been teaching for the last 400 years, the same way that we should continue teaching in the future. And I think it's become very clear to all of us that AI is, whether we like it or not, going to be a forcing function of changing the way that the classroom model works. But I want to focus on exactly why this is so important and what are the things that you should be thinking about when you're teaching your students. And what are the things that students should be thinking about as they go through their college journey of why they should be engaging and preparing for their career. And I think the most important part of that is it used to be for us focusing on the fact that 1 out of every 3 freshmen drops out before their sophomore year. And to me, there was no bigger problem to solve than that. But now I think that has been superseded by the fact that the college system that we currently have today is producing workers that can and will be replaced by AI. We've created an education system that focuses on rote memorization and basically forces students to optimize for grades. But they should be focusing on growth and mastering certain skill sets that AI will never be able to replace. We've always talked about how important it is to teach students the soft skills, right? The collaboration, the creativity. But now that's not just a nice to have, it's going to be a need to have. The one thing that AI can never take from us is the fact that we as human beings have lived experiences that AI can never replicate or take from us. And if we want to think about how do we create students that cannot be replaced by I can tell you from the perspective of someone that is hiring constantly right now and looking for the smartest people to join our team, we're looking for people who don't necessarily have an intense resume of all of the technical skills that we might be looking for, but actually, who are the people that can communicate and collaborate and take the knowledge that they have and apply it to imagining what the world is going to look like 5 years from now? Those are exactly the kinds of people that companies like Nectar are trying to hire. And so when we think about what does that look like in terms of preparing students for jobs like this in the classroom, I think it really comes down to making the most of the time that you actually have during your 30 to an hour and a half minutes that you have in lecture with them. When I close my eyes and think about what does the optimal classroom look like that is supplemented by AI, it is allowing instructors to become facilitators of curiosity in the classroom. So, in a practical application, I think what that looks like is kind of this constant flipped classroom style, where AI now has the ability to take all of the content that you've created for your classroom and personalize it for each student so that it is tailored to the way that they learn best, whether that's through, visual applications and graphs, or whether it's through giving them a breakdown in a list. Whatever that might look like, the content is no longer the part that we have to focus on optimizing. It's been built, it's there. AI can take it and reproduce it in a million different ways so that students can actually do that learning at home by themselves. That's the easy part. The hard part, and the thing that I think should be what curiosity facilitators or instructors should be focusing on now, is how do we actually see that real world application come to life in the classroom? The time that you spend together with your students each week in lecture, in my eyes, should be a time where they are taking the knowledge that they've gained at home with the help of their personalized AI assistants through something like Nectar AI. And then they are able to come to the classroom and do something with their hands, with their voice, the things that, once again, AI cannot take from them, that they can inject their lived experiences into. Now, that sounds like a very big, fluffy, sounds great, but what does that actually look like? What I think that means is creating assignments and assessments in the classroom that are cheat proof. As you can see here, after 2,300 plus conversations that we've had with faculty at over the 100 campuses that are using Nectar AI today, over 80% of educators mentioned to us that students cheating with AI was one of their biggest concerns. And I hear you. I get it. That is what they're doing with ChatGPT and tools like that outside of the classroom. I won't deny that. But how do we make sure that they aren't able to cheat on these assignments and assessments? The only answer is that we actually completely change and adapt them to this new AI world. So things like having students do public speaking, even if it's in a math class, for example. I think we're going to need students to come to the front, present to the class, teach how they would actually apply these skills in the real world. What does this look like in the job that they might want to apply for, the internship that they're going to have this summer? And the reason I say that is because we've all seen the post-COVID phenomenon of students essentially losing their public speaking and social skills. I think that's one of the main things that we should be focusing on over the next few years is how do we make up for the lack of socialization that occurred during the last few years of COVID? And it's also one of the best ways to make sure that students can't cheat on the assignment or assessment. They cannot cheat on public speaking. And so thinking about how you adapt your assignments to making sure that it's something that is unique and personalized to that student, I think is the most important way to sort of mitigate that cheating issue. The other thing that I think also happens when you have students come to the classroom and present these authentic, unique, personalized assessments to the class is that it allows them to build the network that they have with the other students in that class. And that, to me, is one of the main key value propositions of a college education that you cannot replicate anywhere else. We know that this enrollment cliff is coming up in the fall. We're going to have less 18-year-olds going to college than we've ever had before. So how do we make college seem valuable enough that students actually want to keep going and that we see more applications to college rather than less. I believe it is to focus on the thing that, like I said, an 18 to 22-year-old or even past that cannot go find anywhere outside of a college campus, which is the network. If we make it so that every student not just focuses on getting the information and the grade out of each class, but they also focus on how can I build my network and build connections with the smart people around me in every single one of my classes. That is the secondary part of how we make sure that they are prepared for their career and that they leave school with not just the knowledge, but the network. And we all know it is true when they say your network is your net worth. So those are just a few of the things that as we're going through this, I'd love for you to start thinking about how do you take those and apply it to your classroom or to your campus to start to create these cheat-proof assessments and assignments. And like I said, for every single class and for every campus, the classroom of the future is going to look slightly different. But the key here and the consistency across the board is that it is finally time for us to introduce this classroom of the future. AI is creating a world where we are, one way or another, going to have to completely change the way that we do teaching and learning. And so, while on one hand, you're right to be worried that AI is going to take some of those critical thinking skills or that it's going to help students cheat more, those things are true. But what it means is that we now have to come up with the solutions of how do we mitigate that. And I think it's actually an opportunity for us to finally introduce a completely different way of teaching and learning that we've been waiting for a very long time. Now, I know you all probably have some experience or have seen Nectar AI at some point today. I know there was a couple presentations on it, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. But what I do want to focus on is the fact that we built Nectar AI in private beta with schools like Stanford GSB, LAPU, Boston University. And so we created specifically a system that was not built to replace teachers. What you see here are these AI assistants that are trained on the content that you've been creating in your classes for probably the last decade or more, but they are still never going to have the ability to do what you can do, which is connect to your students on that human personalized level in the classroom face to face. Even if that means it's happening over Zoom, the AI still can't tap into the lived experiences that you've had and that your students have had. And so I encourage you to not be afraid of tools like this and whether they will steal your job or not. It's actually our responsibility to make sure that that never happens. And so as you're using tools like Nectar AI or any tool that you choose to use in the classroom, I encourage you to constantly be thinking of feedback that you have for the companies that are building your tools. They will listen. We are at such an early blue ocean stage of AI that every AI company out there is looking for feedback from their users to understand what do you actually need to see in these products. And your feedback is going to be the most critical part of every single AI product that is built out there. So if you're sitting there worried, I have no idea what these companies are going to create, talk to them. Reach out to us. There are so many opportunities. We have monthly feedback sessions. Chloe's door is always open to listen to your feedback. But this is actually going to be one of the most critical parts of how do we decide what AI looks like in the classroom. It's going to be from people like you telling us exactly what you need and what you want to make sure that we never build into the product. So trust us and build that line of communication with the AI tools that you're using. I promise that they are always looking for that feedback from you. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of schools and campuses across the nation that are using Nectar AI today and are starting to implement that classroom of the future, you can see it's happening all across the board. It's not just schools that are like Stanford, it's even community colleges from Mississippi, like Hines Community College. We want to make sure that AI is given across the board to create actual equity, because if not, we're going to further widen the gaps that we already have in our society. It's why we focused at Nectar on delivering it to community colleges and community college systems like the CCC first, because we believe that the students and the schools that typically get these advanced technologies last should actually be the ones to get it first this time. And that also that responsibility also falls on the faculty and the staff and administration at your schools to make sure We know AI is already being used by over 90% of students outside of the classroom on their homework after hours. So that is exactly why it is high time for you to introduce those AI tools in the classroom so that you can be the first point to teach them that AI literacy of how they should safely be using these tools. Now, what I really love to focus on and what has set sort of the basis for all of the research that we've done is the incredible work that Nectar has done with LAPU and the research that LAPU has collected and published on the effects of having AI in every course on campus. LAPU truly did set the tone for the rest of the nation. They were the very first campus to adopt Nectar AI campus wide 2 weeks after we launched it to the world last May. And they have seen incredible results so far, as I'm sure many of you know. What I want to focus on here is that in this research study that LAPU did, we were very excited to obviously see the 20% increase in GPA, 13% rise in the final scores. But the piece of this research study that I like to focus most on is a 36% boost in the intrinsic motivation to learn. Having AI in the classroom didn't just mean that students got better grades, which, for some part, yeah, I guess you could think, is it just because they got the answer easily? I think that's a very fair question to have when you see just the GPA boost. But when you see that actually the number that went up the most was their motivation to learn and engage with the material, that is exactly what we should be optimizing for. That's the result that we want to see when we use AI in the classroom. And that's exactly what we saw here at LAPU. And so this should sort of set the basis for when you're imagining what is the best possible way that you could use AI in your classroom and what do you hope that students get from it. What you're going to want to aim for is actually increasing their motivation to engage with the material and the classroom. And that doesn't just look like being excited to learn. It also looks like being excited to come to lecture, to engage with the people around you who are learning with you. And when AI is used successfully in the classroom, it actually has the power to increase the human contact that we have with one another and the very human parts of learning that we used to love when we were in kindergarten that we've kind of forgotten by the time that we get to college. I think we have an opportunity here to reinvigorate the love that we all have for learning and that students usually forget by the time they get to college and start thinking, this is just a means to an end, or it's a very expensive piece of paper that I have to get. And so I love that LAPU, like I said, has set the tone for this. And this research study that was actually published on Open Praxis set the basis for the statewide research study that we're now doing with the California Community College System. And so this is the piece that I really want to highlight is when we see the results of scaling AI across the entire state of California through the community college system, this is where we're really able to see, do those results still replicate at this level? And so far what we're seeing is yes, it absolutely does. So we are still collecting that data. The research should be completely done and published this summer, but I did want to share some of the earliest results that we are seeing. And again, this is measured by the actual faculty that are employing Nectar AI themselves. So this is not research that we've done. You can trust that it's coming from a third-party source. But what we're seeing is a 13% boost in the GPA and a 17% improvement in the pass-fail rate. And that second piece is the most important part. By giving students this 24/7 access to a personalized learning partner that knows their syllabus, their textbooks, their assignments, that is what is giving them the ability to remain confident enough to not only stay and persist in the class and not drop it, but also to pass the class. To see this kind of improvement where the only difference in the class, and by the way, this is a matched pair study. So we're looking at the last time this class was taught without Nectar AI versus now when it is taught with Nectar AI, and that being the only variable difference. For us to see a 17% improvement in the pass fail rate is incredible. Again, I go back to the fact that 1 out of every 3 freshmen drops out of college before their sophomore year in the US. It is a huge problem that we have had for decades that we need to be thinking more deeply about how we fix, especially as this enrollment cliff arrives in fall. And so when you see technologies like AI giving students the ability to get that confidence that they need, especially post-COVID where they're raising their hand and asking questions less than ever before, this, I think, in my opinion, is the number one reason why you should be thinking about integrating AI into your classroom. This is the support system that students need right now. And if we aren't the ones to provide safe guardrail AI tools in the classroom to them, that's when they're going to go outside and use ChatGPT and these tools that we can't really put any guardrails on. We have no insight into how students are using it. And that's where it starts to go wrong. And that is exactly the impetus that I want to share with you for you to have the confidence of why is it so important to integrate AI into your classroom and not just say, hey, it's here to use it if you want, but to actually explain all of the reasoning that I'm giving to you to your students. I think that the students need to hear from you why it is so important that they learn to engage with AI safely and why they should be using it every step of the way in the classroom. So I want to wrap this up with giving you the opportunity to think about what does the classroom of the future look like for you and how are you going to start to introduce that to your community? And that's not just putting these AI tools in your classroom, but it's sharing these thoughts that you're having with the people around you, bringing up these conversations daily until you start to see systemic change happen on your campus. It's one of the few moments that we've had in the history of humanity where we actually do need to move incredibly quickly if we want humanity to keep up with how fast these technological advancements are being deployed. We have this gap right now that is continuously widening where AI companies are releasing newer and crazier technology every day, but the students that are in college right now need to be at the front lines of being the most advanced with how to actually utilize these technologies if we want them to be safely integrated across our entire society. Right now, we are building the leaders of the future on our campuses right now. The students that you work with every single day are going to be the ones that not only take forward this classroom of the future, but are the ones that decide how AI is going to be used across every part of our lives. And so it's our responsibility, in my opinion, to make sure that they are as prepared as possible to understand how AI can help our society at large and what are exactly the things that we're going to need to do to make sure that it's done correctly so that it becomes an application that saves humanity from some of the biggest problems that we're facing right now rather than creating new problems for us to solve. So thank you all so much for giving me a little bit of your time. I hope that this was helpful and a little bit inspiring for you to think about why is it so important for us to be integrating AI into our teaching and learning practices and what are the implications for our society at large. So I'd love to answer any questions that you have or if you have any thoughts that you want to share about your personal stories using AI in the classroom and how it's helped your students, would love to hear it. But otherwise, thank you all so much for your time.
Well, Kavita, thank you so much for all that you've done in this space and just for really creating something that's so effective for students and allowing us to come along for this wonderful ride in the learning space. So we certainly appreciate you and all of your team's efforts. And Jordan, it's just been amazing to work with you. So thank you for all that you
Likewise.
will do.
Thank you so much, George. I completely agree. It has been just a joy and a pleasure to work with everyone at LAPU's campus. I think that you guys are doing an incredible job setting the tone for what it looks like to properly and safely deploy AI across a campus and how it can truly innovate an entire campus at large. And so I love that we're able to share with the rest of the world the incredible progress that you all have made over the last year and can't wait to see how we continue to grow this with you.
And I was super excited to see the results you got with the community colleges in California, because that just, there's no denying that. That's a big number.
Absolutely.
That's a
It
huge number.
is.
Yeah.
Totally. It is. It's very, very exciting to see. And not a coincidence that it looks so similar to the numbers that you guys found. I think that that really speaks to the fact that this is truly helping students in exactly the way that we need.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so. And our next step is we get to jump off here and go to our the case competition winners to view the winners now. So that's going to be
Absolutely.
absolutely fantastic.
Awesome.
Did you want to close us with anything, Chloe or Kavita? Give you the last words.
I think we're all good. I think we're just very excited to see who the winners are. So let's hop over. Let's go see what the results are.
Let's go.
All right. See you guys there.